Few hands in, we've got ace-10 offsuit in the hijack, the straddle's on, under the gun +1, limps in for 10. We have no choice but to isolate and destroy the opponent. I hate having to do it, but it's mandatory to punish limpers. I raised to 50. We're not actually going to be isolating the limper. The button calls, he's the only one though. Under the gun +1 folds, it's heads up, and we're out of position. The flop comes ace-7-6 with 2 diamonds. We've got top pair and a backdoor straight draw. I'm feeling good about it. We should have the best hand a lot of the time. I bet 50 again. The button quickly reaches for chips and makes the call without really thinking about it. A quick call is usually indicative of a draw of some sort. The fact that he didn't even consider raising makes me rule out hands like 2 pair or better. The turn is the 9 of diamonds, giving us a straight draw, but the flush draw gets there, and some straights get there as well. Plus, ace-9 now has us beat. I check for pot control purposes and to see what the button wants to do. Once again, he acts quickly with a check back. This makes me feel much more confident about our hand. The opponent likely would have bet any flush or straight, and probably would have taken some time to at least consider betting 2 pair. I get the sense that he has a 1 pair hand like 9-8 or a worse ace. The river is the 8 of hearts, giving us the 10 high straight. Based on our timing tells, coupled with the action, we can feel good about betting for value without having to worry that we're beat. I go with the large sizing of 200 to target 2 pair hands, or potentially the low end of the straight. This should look strange after checking the previous street when the flush draw got there. I'll rarely ever have a flush, yet I'm betting pretty big anyway. The button is trying to piece together the story that we're telling. I have to admit, it looks a little fishy. Ultimately, the button doesn't believe us. He calls, we give him the bad news.
Straight. Ace-5, you're the low end.
We straight over straight the opponent to get the session started out on the right foot. We're already winning, and we're looking to expand. Our first straddle, we look down at Queen-Jack offsuit under the gun. The cutoff raises to 75. If you look hard enough, you can see a blurry Andrew Neeme in the distance. He's in the 1 seat on the dealer's left, firing as well. Our hand is too good to abandon. We defend our straddle and call for 50 more. It's heads up, we're out of position. The flop comes ace-king-10 with 2 diamonds. We've got the nuts with a backdoor royal flush draw. The people are so kind out here, they give us a very nice welcome to the table. I check. The opponent recognizes that we won't be very strong on this flop all that often because we would have 3-bet hands like pocket aces, pocket kings, ace-king, and sometimes with pocket 10s. He can accomplish a lot with a small bet. He only makes it 50. He can be doing this with a lot of really weak holdings as a bluff. I want to keep those weak hands in because maybe he'll double barrel while drawing dead. I'll save the check raise for the turn if it's a blank. I flat the 50 to keep our trap open. The turn is the ace of clubs. It pairs the board, so it's not a blank at all. I check. The cutoff doesn't appear to be concerned about another ace coming out. He bets 175. He still could be bluffing, but he can also have plenty of full house combos. Check raising is a little sketchy at this point since we'll have so few full house combos in our range. If we raise, it opens us up to getting re-raised by all sorts of bluffs, and we'd potentially have to fold our straight, which has a lot of value. I call the 175 to keep the opponent's bluffs in once more, and to try to get to showdown without getting blown off of our hand, even though there are lots of bad river cards for us. The dealer puts out the deuce of clubs. This one's a blank unless the opponent has ace deuce or miraculously gets there with pocket deuces. I check one final time. I expect the cutoff to shut down a lot of his bluffs and check those back. We've called twice on a board that's very connected. We could certainly have plenty of trips combos, and even in this situation, we have a straight, yet the cutoff fires a third bullet for 450. We're never folding after under-repping our hand on the previous 2 streets. There's a pretty big bet though. It's now a very real possibility that we're up against a boat. When I'm considering raising, I think about what types of hands would fire all 3 streets and still be able to call a check raise on the river. Full houses definitely would, or they'd re-raise. Some hands like trips might fold. I could potentially get called by ace-queen or ace-jack, but that's probably it, and we have removal to those hands. If the cutoff is bluffing, he won't be able to call a check raise anyway. The amount of hands that we're beating that will call a check raise seems like a thin slice of the opponent's range at this point. I call, anticipating that we've got the winner a good chunk of the time, but not always. The cutoff shows ace-queen offsuit. He flopped top pair with the gutter, then hit trips on the turn. We show him that we've got that beat. It's a weird run out for us, and we happen to be up against the very next best hand, so our check raise probably would have gotten called on the river. We still win several hundred, but sort of the minimum at the same time. It can just be dangerous getting greedy with the board pairing and having so many high cards out there. I'm okay with the outcome though. Next, it's our turn for ace-queen. We're under the gun +1. I raise to 60. There are quite a few interested customers. The button calls, who was the opponent in the last hand. He's out for revenge. The big blind calls, and the under the gun straddler calls as well. We're going 4 ways to the flop. It comes queen 3 deuce rainbow. We've got top, and a backdoor straight draw. Still, there are lots of other players in the hand. It checks to us. We're going to be firing for value and to clear out the field. I bet 140. Maybe we'll win right now, or maybe we'll get one caller. I don't anticipate much more action than that. I'm very wrong. No one folds. The 3 opponents all call. I'm not even sure what to put everyone on. I imagine one player has a queen and the rest either have straight draws or are slow playing sets. The turn is another deuce, which I'm glad to see because it reduces the amount of set combos that we could have been up against, and there shouldn't be many deuces in my opponent's range, if any. It checks to me. I check for pot control purposes and to see how players will proceed going forward. The button checks back. I'm no longer concerned. He's going to have us beat. If nothing changes on the river, I'll only have to be worried about the big blind and the under the gun straddler. The dealer puts out the 4 of clubs. Pocket 4s make a boat. 6-5 and ace-5 also get there. The big blind bets 225. It's a tiny sizing that I take at face value. It looks like he has a medium strength hand like a bad queen and is trying to get to showdown as cheaply as possible. Under the gun folds. We won't be folding. We didn't put in the raise on the river in the previous hand that we went over, but we're putting one in here. I make it 600 to go. This is for pure value to get a hand like king queen or queen jack to call. The button folds. The action's on the big blind. He's got our number. It's 600, but he's not going to call us maybe. He re-raises to 1600. What on earth is going on here? They say if you get check raised on the river, you should almost always fold because you're pretty much just going to be up against the nuts. If you get 3-bet on the river, it's even more likely. I'm replaying the hand in my mind. I was so sure that the small river bet was a blocker. Now I'm wondering if he was trying to induce a raise with a hand like quad deuces or 3 or 4s full. I don't think that we'd get re-raised by a straight, so I'm ruling that hand out, especially because we have removal to ace-5. The opponent will never have queens full, and actually should be concerned that we could have that hand because occasionally I might check turn with pocket queens, figuring that we'd be up against a lot of straight draws that wouldn't be able to call a turn bet, but may bluff river if they don't get there. I'm confused, but I go with my initial read that the opponent bet small with a medium strength hand and may now be attempting some kind of Hail Mary bluff. I call for 1,000 more, and we hear one of my favorite things. The opponent turned queen 10 offsuit into an odd bluff and takes himself straight to value town. Our assessment of the situation is correct, that the big blind bet small on the river to get to showdown cheaply, then for some reason decided to charge himself the maximum to get to showdown. We win a big pot, even for the stakes that we're playing tonight. Our stack climbs to almost 8,000. 6 minutes later, we're dealt ace-jack offsuit in the big blind. The cutoff raises to 60. The small blind calls. We can actually fold or call. Studies have proven that calling is at least 7 times more fun. We call. The under the gun straddler also calls. We're going 4 ways to the flop. The dealer puts out ace-jack 6 with 2 hearts. We've got top 2 pair and a multi-way pot. The small blind checks. We check, expecting the pre-flop raiser to occasionally bet. Under the gun checks. The cutoff is a giant disappointment to some YouTube viewers he's never met, and he checks back. Everyone gets to see a free one. The turn is the 7 of diamonds. It's pretty much a blank. The small blind takes it upon herself to bet 75. Unless she's got pocket 7s or pocket 6s, we're going to have the best hand. I raise to 250 for value. We don't want anyone behind to have an opportunity to call a relatively small bet with a draw and get there on us. We needed to make it more. Surprisingly, the under the gun player isn't immediately folding. He cold calls the raise. Maybe he has a worse 2 pair or a combo draw of some sort. He'd almost definitely re-raise with a set of 7s or 6s, so I'm ruling those types of hands that are beating us out. The cutoff folds. The small blind likes the price that she's getting. She calls for 175 more. She won't have us beat either. 3 of us are still in, and we've got to be best going into the river. The dealer puts out the 8 of diamonds. Some straights get there, but I'm not all that worried about straight draws completing when there are flush draw possibilities out there. It'd be pretty ambitious for someone to call a raise on the turn with 10-9 or 5-4, unless they also had hearts. I doubt either opponent would have 9-5 either. The small blind checks. Missed draws won't be able to call a bet at any size. I'm going to target worse 2 pair hands like ace-7, ace-6, 7-6, 8-6 of hearts, and 8-7 of hearts. I bet 900, liking the run out that we got. Under the gun is in a tank for a while. If he just calls, we almost for sure have him beat because he'd obviously raise with 10-9 and perhaps even with 5-4. Ultimately, he tosses in a calling chip. I'm pretty excited about it. The small blind takes a little bit of time before eventually folding. We turn over our top 2 pair. The opponent turns over a set of sixes. I wasn't expecting to see that. I'm glad we didn't get re-raised on the turn because we could have lost a lot more money. The deck set us up to lose a good chunk there, and we did, but it could have been much worse for us. After losing a few pots and being down from the high point, I'm ready to call it a night and leave with what's still a sizable win.